Tonight you're not a hero, not really. You're a function, a name on a roster, a body in a suit, a voice meant to sound confident over the radio. You're a Soviet cosmonaut in the early 1960s, hand-picked for your silence and your symmetry. You were trained to endure, to obey, to smile when told. And now you're drifting through low Earth orbit in a vessel that costs more in blood than in steel. The stars look peaceful. They are not. The capsule is quiet. It should not be. Before we climb into that silence, do me one small favour. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love to see who's tuning in from around the world. If you'd like early access to more of these slowly unravelling histories, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, you'll find the Patreon link in the description. But for now, lie back, get comfortable. Let's begin. Your name isn't chosen. It's extracted, pulled from a thick folder of candidates like a splinter from skin. Not for brilliance, not for leadership, not even for bravery. You're fast, obedient, and most importantly, unremarkable. You don't stand out. You're just clean enough. You don't ask too many questions, and your test scores hover in that comfortable space between promising and replaceable. You're not exceptional. That's what makes you perfect. The process begins far from you. In an office you'll never see, behind a desk you'll never sit at. Your personnel file is weighed like produce. It travels from one ministry to another, accumulating stamps, smudges, and silent approvals. Somewhere along the way, a man in a clean uniform draws a red circle around your name and makes a note in the margin. That's your selection. Not a celebration, not a ceremony, just a scribble. You don't know it's happened until 2 weeks later, when your commanding officer pulls you aside at the end of drills and hands you a sealed envelope. It has no return address, no explanation, just your full name typed in block letters across the front and a strange wax seal pressed at the bottom. Report to the station, he says. You've been transferred. He offers no more than that. You know better than to ask. Inside, the barracks is quiet that night. A few glances in your direction, quickly withdrawn. No one speaks. You pack slowly. A shaving kit, 2 changes of uniform, a pair of worn boots, recently resoled. You consider taking the photograph of your parents, but leave it behind. Sentimentality doesn't travel well, and you've already been told personal items will be screened. Better to part with it now than have it confiscated by someone who doesn't understand what it is. The envelope remains unopened, not because you aren't curious, Gray, you are, but because curiosity is a habit you've been trained to suppress. It slows people down, it gets noticed. You've seen others slip that way, asking too many questions about their orders, about their comrades, about the men who left in the middle of the night and didn't come back. They disappeared even faster after that. You tell yourself the letter probably doesn't say anything important anyway. Just instructions, a location, a number. You report to the rail station before sunrise. The sky's pale grey, the kind of light that feels unfinished. The platform is mostly empty. One soldier stands at the far end with a clipboard and a cigarette. He doesn't look at you as he checks your papers. Just waves you toward the second car. You climb aboard without speaking. Inside, the car is half full. All men, all your age or close to it. Some wear the same uniform as you, others don't. But you can see it in their posture. They're quiet. They're like you. Hand-picked, uninformed, transferred. You nod once to the nearest man. He doesn't return it. No one speaks. No one reads. A few stare at their boots like they're waiting for them to say something. The train begins to move. Slowly at first, then with more confidence. You pass forests, villages, empty stations with names you've never heard, and signs too faded to read. The windows are streaked with frost. The air smells faintly of fuel and cold bread. There are no conductors, besides the man with the clipboard, who walks the aisles once each morning and never stops to chat. He checks names, counts heads, walks on. That's all. You sleep in shifts, half resting, half watching the landscape blur by. There's no schedule posted, no indication of where you are or how far you've gone, just silence and motion. Occasionally, a man is told to disembark at a quiet station. He leaves without complaint. His seat remains empty afterward, as if no one had ever sat there. You don't ask where they go. You assume you'll find out soon enough. On the fourth day, you wake to a change in the rhythm. The wheels slow. The whistle sounds different, harsher, shorter. You feel it in your stomach before you see it. The train is stopping. Not at a city, not at a named place, but at a wide stretch of snow and concrete bordered by tall fencing and nothing else. You reach into your coat for the envelope. It's soft now from being handled so often, the seal smudged. You still haven't opened it. You probably never will. A low buzz crackles through the speakers overhead. The clipboard officer steps back into the car and calls a number. It's yours. You stand, adjust your bag, and walk to the door. You are about to arrive. You do not yet know where. You step down from the train into cold that doesn't feel natural. Not just weather, something else. Something industrial. The air has that sour, metallic tang of old machinery and disinfectant that never quite washes out. Ahead of you, two men in grey coats wait beside a small black truck. One holds a clipboard. The other carries a rifle, slung but very visible. Neither man looks surprised to see you. It's as if they already know everything about you, including the exact moment you'd set foot on this unnamed stretch of snow-covered platform. They don't speak right away. You hand over the envelope, the one you haven't opened. The clipboard man takes it, rips the seal without ceremony, scans the contents, then checks a name off his list. You hear the scratch of pen on paper and nothing more. A nod follows. You're told to board the truck. There are no questions, no introductions. Just that word again. Follow. The truck smells of exhaust and wet canvas. The benches are metal, unpadded, cold even through your coat. Two other men are already inside, neither of them looking up. You nod slightly, but they don't respond. You all sit like cargo, eyes forward, hands on knees. The ride is short, maybe 20 minutes, maybe longer. The roads twist and buck, but no one speaks, not even when the truck jolts hard over something uneven and your boots leave the floor for half a second. Eventually, the brakes hiss and the door unlocks. You step into what looks, at first, like a prison. High fences topped with wire, watchtowers that aren't manned, or at least no one visible. Buildings made of poured concrete, stained with decades of soot and weather. No flags, no signs, just blankness. A place not meant to be seen by anyone who hasn't been brought there on purpose. You are ushered into a long, windowless hall, a white tile floor, fluorescent lights that buzz faintly overhead. The man with the clipboard points you toward a row of benches. You sit. A nurse, or someone dressed like one, appears and pulls you by the elbow into a side room without a word. There's a metal chair, a tray of needles, a machine with dials that looks older than you are. She doesn't smile. She doesn't explain. They draw blood, take your pulse, shine lights into your eyes and down your throat. A man with a cold stethoscope listens to your chest, makes a mark on your chart, and moves on. You're told to strip. You do. You're told to weigh yourself. You do. You're told to urinate into a cup. You do that too. The nurse watches the entire time, not for impropriety, but for efficiency. You are not a person here. You are a set of metrics to be verified. The entire process takes maybe 20 minutes, maybe an hour. Time isn't behaving normally anymore. Eventually, you're handed a folded uniform. Not your usual one. This is thinner, paler, and bears no insignia. You're told to change. Your old clothes are taken from you and sealed in a plastic bag. You never see them again. Then comes the barracks. There is no sign over the door, no roster posted. Just a heavy steel handle and the echo of boots behind you. Inside it's dim. Rows of cots stretch wall to wall, each numbered in black stenciled paint. No curtains, no lockers, no privacy. Just iron bed frames and wool blankets, folded at the foot of each mattress. The air is thick, not just with the sweat of too many bodies in too small a space, but with something deeper, something anxious, something heavy. You're assigned to cot 24, bottom bunk. The man above you is already asleep or pretending to be. Another man, 2 bunks over, is rocking slightly, murmuring numbers to himself. No one looks up when you enter. You place your bag, what little you still have, at the head of the bed and sit. The mattress groans under your weight. Thin, stiff, cold. You feel the springs through the fabric. Dinner, if you can call it that, is served in a long, narrow room with high windows too dirty to see through. Metal trays, a ladle of something vaguely beige, 2 slices of black bread. No one speaks. The sound of utensils against tin is the loudest thing in the room. You sit, you chew, you swallow. The food tastes like paste and salt. It stays down, which is the best you can hope for. Back in the barracks, the lights dim without warning. There's no bell, no announcement, just a hum as the overhead bulbs fade to a dull orange. Men begin to lie down in silence. Some pray, some stare at the ceiling. You mimic them. You fold your arms behind your head and listen. There is no talking, only breathing. A cough from somewhere near the door. Someone grinding their teeth across the room. Your bunkmate shifts above you. His weight makes the frame creak. He mutters something. Not to you. You catch only a word or two. Maybe a name. Maybe a number. Then he goes still. The next day you are woken at 0600 by the bark of a whistle. The lights return all at once, harsh, white, unflattering. You blink against the glare and rise automatically. The cot is already cold. The man above you is gone. You assume he's at the medical wing, or maybe testing, or maybe breakfast early for reassignment. You don't know. You aren't told. His bag is gone too, the sheet folded, his number still stenciled on the bunk rail, untouched. You ask a man nearby if he saw where your bunkmate went. He doesn't respond. He just stares at you for a second too long, then walks away. You never see that bunkmate again. No explanation, no name, no goodbye, only the empty bed above yours, waiting for someone else. You're woken before dawn and told to dress quickly. No explanation, just a name called in the dark, and the low flick of a switchblade flashlight cutting across your cot. The man doesn't wait for you to acknowledge him. You're expected to follow. Outside, the hallway smells like bleach and steel. Cold bites at your ankles through the thin fabric of your issued uniform. You don't know where you're going, and you've learned better than to ask. The first room is white, painfully white, every surface sterilized to the point of friction. Like touching anything might slice skin. There's a chair in the center, not the kind you sit in to rest, but the kind used in dentist offices and interrogation rooms. You're told to strip to the waist and sit down. A set of wires is clipped to your chest, temples, wrists. A nurse presses a stethoscope to your ribs with the warmth of someone who doesn't want to be there either. No one speaks. A man in a grey coat watches from the far wall, arms folded, eyes sharp. They run tests, reaction times, vision range, breath capacity. They pump air through your lungs until your head spins. You try not to cough. They shine lights in your eyes until your pupils burn and ask if the blur looks more like a square or a circle. You answer. It doesn't matter what you say. They don't write anything down. Then come the machines. You're strapped into a spinning capsule, a centrifuge, designed to simulate G-forces far beyond anything the human body should tolerate. It begins slowly, then not. You feel your skin stretch sideways, your vision narrow, your limbs pull away from you, not violently, just deliberately, as if your body is being asked to consider something else. You grit your teeth. Your stomach climbs into your throat and trembles there. The instructor says nothing, just watches the monitor. When it stops, you're pulled out sideways. You collapse onto the floor without ceremony. Someone helps you to your feet, but only because leaving you there would delay the next candidate. You're not praised, you're not criticized, you're simply waved toward the next room. Cold follows. They place you in a chamber just above freezing. You're instructed to stand still. No movement, no speech. A thermometer is attached to your thigh, a sensor to your spine. You are timed. You think of your bunkmate, the one who vanished. You wonder how long he lasted in this room, if he was here at all. Your teeth begin to chatter. You clench your jaw until they stop. You tell yourself, this is still easier than centrifuge. After 20 minutes, you're pulled from the cold and moved directly to the opposite, a heat chamber. No time to adjust. Your body screams in both directions. The air inside smells like rubber and sweat. You sweat before you even enter. There is no shade, no fan, no noise, except your own pulse pressing against the inside of your skull. Someone hands you a small bottle of water and tells you not to drink it all at once. You don't. You barely touch it. You're not allowed to sit, not allowed to kneel. You stand as your boot sticks slightly to the metal floor and your skin begins to itch in places you can't reach. You breathe slowly, then faster, then slowly again. You hear your own breath echoing off the walls. That is the only voice in the room. You last long enough to be noticed. Then you're pulled out. They test you in darkness next. A sealed chamber, no light, no sound. A small red button placed in your palm. Press it, they say. If you feel overwhelmed, then they close the door. You think about pressing it immediately, just to see what happens. But you don't. You sit on the floor and count your breaths. You don't know how long you're in there. When the door opens again, you feel light stab into your retinas, like needles. You blink, but you don't flinch. They test your hearing, your sense of balance, your ability to operate fine tools while your hands are shaking. You are handed wires and tweezers and told to perform repairs with gloves 3 sizes too thick. You drop things, you pick them up. You pretend the frustration doesn't exist. You are learning that this isn't about doing things well. It's about doing them without asking why. At night, back in the barracks, no one speaks about the tests. You see bruises on someone's ribs, bandages on another man's fingers. You wake once to the sound of someone vomiting into a bin beneath his cot. He doesn't get up. No one calls for help. By morning, his bed is made and empty. Another disappearance, no explanation. You've stopped looking for them. One afternoon, they bring you outside, not to breathe fresh air. There isn't any, but to run. Not laps, but drills. You're strapped into a mock parachute harness, lifted into the air, then dropped from a platform high enough to scare you, but not high enough to kill you. You hit the ground hard. They time how quickly you stand. You try not to limp. Later, you spend 2 hours crawling through simulated debris, with a visor fogging your vision and alarms wailing in your ears. You're told this will simulate escape procedures. No one tells you what you'll be escaping from. Then they start injecting things. Controlled doses, they say, to see how your body responds under pressure. You're given a shot that makes your heart race, another that makes it slow. You're told to recite mission steps while blinking away nausea. They show you diagrams of a capsule and ask you to label every system in order of importance. You forget to. They mark it down, but they don't stop you. You move on. The final test is simpler. A large room, a line of men, a single table, on the table, a form, a long, pale, impersonal form, with your name already filled in. You're handed a pen. No one tells you what it says. It doesn't matter. You know what it means. You sign. The man across the table nods and hands you a fresh uniform. This one fits better. The fabric is smoother. The insignia is sewn in. He doesn't shake your hand. He doesn't say congratulations. He just says the words like they've been said 1,000 times before. You've been advanced. You nod. You leave the room. You do not smile. They tell you the media will be arriving in the morning, not in a way that suggests excitement, just a flat announcement, delivered during breakfast between 2 spoonfuls of porridge. Make yourselves presentable, the officer says, as if that were ever optional. You don't ask what for. The silence between his words is already heavy with instruction. That night, you're handed a freshly pressed uniform, a newer cut, sharper at the shoulders, cleaner at the cuffs. It fits awkwardly, tailored for an idealized version of yourself you haven't become. You're told to shave twice, once before bed, again at dawn. You comply. Everyone does. The barracks are filled with the quiet scrape of razors long after lights out. At sunrise, a line forms outside the main hall. You're placed in the centre, third from the left. Your boots are polished until your reflection glints in them, though you barely recognise your own shape. You're given instructions, how to stand, where to look, which angle makes your jawline stronger. A woman in a dark skirt and clipboard checks each of you, like mannequins in a shop window. Occasionally, she makes notes. Once, she frowns at a man's ears. He's gone the next morning. When the camera crews arrive, everything changes tempo. Bright lights are wheeled in. Backdrops are set up. Questions are rehearsed before they're asked. You're handed a list of answers and told which ones to use depending on which reporter is speaking. You memorise them quickly, not because they're meaningful, but because they're safe. Each sentence ends with a patriotic phrase. Each statement emphasises duty. There is no I, only we, and the mission, and for the glory of the Soviet people. You're ushered to a stool in front of a bright red curtain. A man with large hands pats your shoulders down, straightens your collar, adjusts your angle. Chin up, he says, eyes forward, serious but optimistic. You do your best. The flash burns your eyes. The photographer grunts in approval. Next comes the video footage. You're made to walk across the courtyard several times, briskly, confidently, with your helmet under one arm, even though it's unnecessary. They want to show strength. They want to show pride. You rehearse the gesture until it feels like a tick. A reporter asks you what space means to you. You answer, opportunity, duty, destiny. That's what you were told to say. You smile after the word duty, just as rehearsed. You aren't sure the smile looks real. Later, you are filmed standing at attention, while a government official praises your exemplary composure. You nod at the right moment, your face tight with effort. He mispronounces your last name. No one corrects him. The audience claps anyway. When they move on to interviews, your name is called. You sit across from a journalist with a warm smile and a blank notebook. She asks if you're proud to serve your country. You say yes. She asks if you're afraid. You say no. She doesn't ask a third question. The interview ends with a firm handshake and a thank you for your honesty. You don't remember blinking the entire time. Afterward, you're herded into the main hall again, where the footage is played back on a small monitor. It's silent, shaky, and oversaturated. Your voice sounds higher than you remember. Your face looks thinner. There's a moment when you glance slightly off camera, just half a second, and your eyes don't match the words coming out of your mouth. One of the officers watching scribbles something down. Over the following week, your schedule shifts. Less technical, more symbolic. You're given a new version of your biography, one that includes fabricated hobbies and family quotes you've never heard. From a small town with big dreams. You're instructed to memorize it. They say it will help the public relate to you. You want to argue that the public doesn't know who you are, but you don't. Arguing isn't part of the program. You're told how to walk for television, how to pause for photographs, how to angle your hand when saluting so it catches the light. One of the instructors reminds you that posture is not just about appearance. It's about ideology. Shoulders back, spine straight. The people must see strength in you, even if there's none left. You're introduced to the concept of messaging. It's explained to you like an equation. You plus uniform plus prepared statement equals trust. You are a variable. The message is constant. Your private thoughts, your discomfort, your doubts, none of that matters. What matters is consistency, message discipline, facial control. In a moment of misstep, someone quotes Lenin, but you're too tired to hear the words clearly. One morning your photo appears on a bulletin board in the corridor between the mess and the gym. It's the same one they took weeks ago, the stiff-collared, chin-up, forward-facing image, where your eyes look slightly too wide. Underneath is your name, your title, and a caption, "Stepping forward into the stars for all of us." You didn't write that. You would never have written that, but now it's yours. By the end of the month, you begin seeing yourself in other places, newsletters, state bulletins, clipped into briefing packets. Once, your image appears in a magazine someone smuggled into the barracks. It's a small grainy photo beside a story about Soviet innovation. The article calls you bright-eyed and eager. You don't remember being either of those things. Your bunkmates stop calling you by your last name. They call you poster boy now. Not cruelly, not kindly, just with that tired edge that says they know you didn't choose it. That maybe you didn't survive something. That maybe you simply adapted better than they did. The attention isn't constant, but it's persistent. You're asked to smile during breakfast. You're filmed while tying your boots. You're told your answers should be more concise, more enthusiastic, more like someone who believes the slogans written beneath his name. You learn to perform belief. You learn the weight of nodding at the right time. You learn to smile like you mean it. And all the while, the fear stays with you. Not loud, not obvious, just coiled inside your chest, like something sleeping. You are afraid, though you would never admit it. Not to the press, not to the officers, not to yourself, unless you're very tired and the lights are off, and no one else is breathing nearby. You keep waiting for someone to say, "Enough of this, let's go back to the mission." But they don't. Because this is the mission now. You aren't just a pilot or a passenger or even a man anymore. You're an image, a message, something that looks better from far away. Eventually, they hand you the final draft of your official profile. It's printed on thick paper with glossy ink. It calls you an inspiration to the next generation. You try to imagine who that might be. All you see are more young men lined up outside a door, waiting for a clipboard to tell them who they're supposed to be. You fold the profile and place it inside your locker. You won't look at it again. Your image has already moved on without you. Circulated, captioned, rewritten. You don't own your name anymore, someone else does. The call comes just after morning drills. A name, your name, barked through the hallway in a clipped voice you don't recognize. There's no ceremony in it, no build-up. You wipe your face on your sleeve, set down your training manual, and follow the junior officer who's already halfway down the hall. He doesn't tell you where you're going. You don't ask. You've learned by now that the only people who ask questions in this facility are people who haven't been here long enough to know better. You're led to the administrative wing, a rare place of polished floors and working light bulbs, where the air smells more like paper and polish than sweat and rust. There's a reception desk, but no one behind it, just a hallway that seems too quiet for a military installation. The officer knocks twice on a heavy door and opens it without waiting for a reply. He steps aside. You walk in. The room is large but empty. One long table stretches across the floor, with too many chairs for the number of people actually seated. At the far end sits a general whose uniform is so perfectly pressed it might have been printed. His hair is white, his eyebrows darker than they should be. His eyes do not lift when you enter. He's already reading something on a sheet of paper and doesn't stop. Standing beside him is a man in civilian dress, a beige suit, collar undone, sleeves rolled to the elbows. He's holding a thick clipboard and smells faintly of cigarette smoke and chalk. You realise after a moment that he's an engineer. Not the type that repairs things, but the type who designs systems you'll never fully understand. He glances at you, gives a nod that isn't unfriendly, and starts flipping pages. "Sit," the general says, finally looking up. "You do? What follows is called a briefing, though that's a generous word for it. It's less a flow of information and more a series of performances." The general speaks first, delivering what sounds like a speech he's given dozens of times before, possibly in front of mirrors. He talks about honour, about legacy, about the needs of the Soviet people, about the responsibility you now carry, the face of progress, the hand that reaches where no citizen has yet gone. You nod at the right points. You keep your posture straight. You make your face the correct blend of solemn and inspired. Inside, you're still caught on the phrase, the needs of the people. No one has asked what your needs are. You suspect no one will. The engineer steps in next. He's less rehearsed, but quicker. He begins reciting numbers, oxygen flow rates, electrical thresholds, orbital decay margins. You recognize the terms mostly. You don't recognize the sequence. He rattles them off like incantations, not expecting you to absorb them, but to receive them. As if understanding were secondary to obedience. He hands you a booklet, thick folded once, pages stiff from overuse. A checklist, every step of the mission, printed in dense blocks of text, half typed, half scrawled by hand in the margins. Some lines are already crossed out, some have been underlined in red. You flip through the pages slowly, trying to hide the fact that they mean very little in this moment. The capsule systems, the launch sequence, the re-entry vectors. It all blends together in a blur of acronyms and warnings. "You'll need to memorize that," the engineer says. "Not all of it, but enough." He points to a line near the bottom of the first page. "This one especially, and this one." You nod. You don't say that they look exactly like the others. The general folds his hands in front of him and clears his throat. "You will be the only pilot," he says. "Autopilot is primary. Manual override is possible, but not preferred. Do not override unless instructed. Do not report failure unless failure is absolute." You nod again. You've practiced this part. They show you diagrams, schematics of the capsule's layout, seat position, airflow regulators, a waste collection unit. The engineer points to it and raises an eyebrow. "Don't let the seal break," he says, almost joking. You don't laugh. Neither does the general. Then come the rules. You are to report only to designated frequencies. You are to ignore any cross signals unless pre-authorized. If a system malfunctions, you are to follow protocol, not instinct. If you lose contact, you are to maintain schedule. If the schedule breaks, you are to maintain position. No questions are asked of you, only confirmations. They pause after each point. You nod each time. After nearly an hour, the engineer collects the documents, stacks them neatly, and exits without a word. The general remains seated. "There are forms you must sign," he says almost wearily. He opens a file folder and slides several papers across the table toward you. They're printed in small font, smothered in stamps, and partially redacted, even to you. One bears your name, followed by a series of numbers you don't recognize. Another lists a title you haven't been officially given yet. At the bottom of each page is a blank line, waiting for your signature. You are not told what they contain. You are not asked if you consent. It's not about permission. It's about confirmation, proof that if things go wrong, they can say the papers were in order. That you agreed, even if you didn't know what you were agreeing to. You take the pen. It's heavier than you expect. The kind that was probably manufactured with ceremony in mind. You sign the first page, then the second. The third is already smudged from someone else's fingerprints. You sign that one too. The general watches in silence. When you're done, he collects the papers, places them back in the folder, and presses it closed. "You are now mission property," he says. "Dismissed." You rise, you salute. He does not return it. You walk out the door. There is no applause, no handshake, no nod of approval from the officer in the hallway. You return to the barracks as if nothing has changed, but something has. It's subtle, almost imperceptible, but real. You are no longer training, you are scheduled. Your name has been entered into a different list now, one that does not include an exit strategy. You lie awake that night, staring at the underside of the bunk above you. The checklist sits on the floor beside your cot. You've already begun memorizing it, though it makes no more sense in the dark than it did under the overhead lights. You turn it over and over in your mind, page by page, line by line. You don't understand it yet. You're not expected to, but you nodded, and that was enough. They wake you at 3:40 a.m, not with ceremony or alarms, but with a hand on your shoulder and a quiet, "It's time." There's no mistaking what they mean. You dress without speaking. The uniform laid out on the chair beside your cot is crisp and stiff, newly pressed for the occasion. The boots are clean. The underlayer of the flight suit is tight enough to make breathing feel like a decision. You pull each part on like armour, like costume, like resignation. The walk to the suiting room is longer than it has ever felt before. You've walked these halls a dozen times, but never with this kind of weight on your chest. The walls are the same grey, the lights flicker the same way, but your body knows something is different. It's in your fingers, which shake only slightly, and your stomach, which has curled itself into something unreadable. You don't speak. Neither does the technician escorting you. Inside, the room is bright and cold. 3 men work quickly, without chatter. They speak in numbers and acronyms. You hold out your arms and let them dress you the rest of the way. First the pressure garment, then the outer layer, then the gloves, clamped down hard enough to pinch, then the helmet, locked in place with a metallic hiss that echoes inside your ears. The visor remains up for now. You breathe shallowly, aware of every inhale. They run final checks, suit integrity, temperature regulation, communication line, heart rate. You're told to blink once for yes, twice for no. You do. Everything is fine. Everything is not fine. But no one's asking that question. You're moved into the transport vehicle. It's not comfortable, but you've stopped expecting comfort. You sit upright, strapped in, the helmet now fully closed. Your breath fogs slightly against the inner surface. You can't scratch your nose. You try not to think about it. The ride is short. Outside, dawn is barely beginning to break. The launch gantry looms out of the fog like a skeleton. Massive, rusted at the edges, trembling ever so slightly in the morning wind. As the vehicle stops, a technician opens the door and helps you out. Your legs are stiff but functional. You walk with deliberate care up the platform, step by step, until you reach the elevator. It jerks once, then rises. At the top, the capsule waits. Round, narrow, nothing like what you imagined when you were younger and thought spacecraft might be sleek and silver. This is utilitarian, welded seams and riveted edges, the surface pitted, the paint already dull. You're guided inside like a tool being returned to its box. The seat is moulded specifically for you, but still manages to be uncomfortable. They strap you in with quiet efficiency, threading belts over your shoulders, across your chest, down your thighs. One of them gives a thumbs up. You return it, your glove heavy and awkward. The hatch closes. You feel the pressure seal engage, the soft clunk of locking bolts. Then the outer hatch. The sounds become muffled, then vanish entirely. It is quiet inside the capsule. You hear your own breath and the soft hiss of the oxygen system. A voice comes through the headset, flat, uninflected. They begin the checklist. You go through it line by line. You know it by heart. Flip this switch. Confirm that light. Read that pressure. Every movement takes effort. The gloves are thick and the buttons are small. You force yourself to move with mechanical precision. You've rehearsed this enough times to know the rhythm, even if you don't feel it now. Launch in T-10 minutes. The voice doesn't belong to anyone you know, just a technician on a channel, reading off lines he's probably said 100 times. There is no emotion in it. That's supposed to be reassuring. You go still, hands folded, breath steady. There is nothing left to do now. You are fully strapped in. You are fully alone. You are about to be launched from the earth by men you've never met into a sky that doesn't care whether you come back. The countdown begins. You listen to each second tick past like it belongs to someone else's life. The engines engage in stages, like a creature waking up. The platform vibrates beneath you. The whole world seems to shift. Your fingers twitch against the armrests. Your mouth is dry. Then comes ignition. The rocket roars to life beneath you with a force that doesn't feel mechanical. It feels biological, like you've been swallowed by something alive. The capsule rattles, your spine compresses, your chest caves inward as the G-forces multiply, pressing you deeper into the seat until your vision darkens at the edges. You try to breathe. You succeed barely. You lose track of time. The vibration becomes everything. You feel it in your teeth, your throat, your bones. The noise is enormous, but inside the helmet it's muffled, like hearing your own death through a wall. A voice reads numbers through the headset, altitude, speed, trajectory, but they may as well be fiction. Stage 1 separates. You hear it, a sharp crack, and the sudden lurch of freedom. The capsule shudders violently, then steadies. The pressure eases for a moment. Then it resumes. Stage 2 ignites. You close your eyes not out of fear, but to block out the weight. Your body is a tool now, a payload, a symbol of progress bolted to a glorified explosive. Then suddenly the thrust fades. Weight disappears. Not slowly, not gradually. It's just gone. You lift slightly in your harness. The straps are the only things keeping you from floating upward. Your breath comes easier now, but faster too. You blink. The vibration has stopped, so has the noise. A voice crackles in your headset. Orbit achieved. You wait for more. There is no more. The voice doesn't congratulate you. It doesn't even say goodbye. You float in a silence that feels larger than the capsule. You glance at the instruments. Everything appears nominal. You try to radio back. A brief reply confirms telemetry. Then nothing. The channel remains open, but no one speaks. The earth curves below you through the small porthole. Pale blue, immense and entirely indifferent. You stare at it for a long moment. It does not stare back. You are alone in orbit. Mission control has gone quiet. Your first hours in orbit are not what you expected. There is no awe, no breathless wonder, no cinematic music swelling in your head. Just silence. Endless, heavy silence, broken only by the occasional hiss of air cycling through the life support system and the soft click of relays behind the wall panels. You've read that space is quiet. What they don't tell you is how personal the silence feels, like it's watching you back. You begin your tasks as scheduled. The checklist is taped beside you, already creased at the corners. You move through it line by line, just as rehearsed. The same sequence you've practiced 100 times in a mock-up on Earth. But up here, everything feels different, slower, heavier somehow, even in weightlessness. Your gloves are too thick, your suit too stiff. You can't get a grip on the toggle switches without clumsily grazing the adjacent ones. The panel doesn't hum the way it did during simulations. It hums less or maybe more, or maybe just wrong. Your fingers are already sweating. The inside of your gloves are damp. Moisture beads around your wrists. Too small to slide, but too large to ignore. You try to shake your hand slightly to move the condensation down. It doesn't work. You push on. You record environmental readings from 3 separate systems. 2 agree. 1 drifts a few decimal places every time you check. You write it down anyway. There is no protocol for the number feels wrong. Just record it. Move on. You try to take a water ration, but the valve is sticking. You fumble with it for 30 seconds before it clicks open, spraying a few precious milliliters into the air. You lunge forward, catching it in your mouth before it drifts away. The liquid tastes metallic, like a mouthful of warm keys. You swallow hard, forcing yourself not to gag. There's no dignity in vomiting inside your own helmet, and the waste suction isn't designed for that anyway. Time becomes unclear. You glance at the onboard chronometer, but it doesn't help. Hours feel like minutes. Minutes feel like echoes. The capsule rotates slowly, and the light from the porthole moves from too bright to too dim in a cycle that your body hasn't learned to trust yet. You think you've orbited the Earth twice already, maybe 3 times. You try to count. You lose track. The globe looks the same every time it drifts beneath you. Distant, silent, untouchable. You check communications again. There's a static burst followed by a short confirmation. You reply just as you're trained to, then wait. Nothing follows. No voice, no update, no questions. You wonder if the radio team has rotated out for their shift, or if they've simply moved on. You've read the manuals. You know contact isn't always constant. Still, the silence feels larger than it should. You keep the channel open, just in case. You begin another checklist. This one covers internal system diagnostics. You scan pressure levels, battery voltage, life support stability. One gauge hovers a little lower than expected, but not outside acceptable parameters. You mark it, no alerts trigger. That too is considered a success. The capsule groans as it shifts slightly, a sound like expanding metal or protesting joints. You freeze for a moment, hand poised above the next switch. The noise stops. You wait another full minute before resuming. Nothing breaks, nothing explains itself. You remove your gloves for a moment, just a moment, to flex your fingers. Your palms are red and damp, your knuckles pale. You rub them gently, press your thumb into each joint, then slide the gloves back on. They're heavier now with sweat. You try not to think about what they'll smell like in a few more hours. There's no airflow designed for comfort here, only function. You wipe your visor with a sleeve, knowing it won't do much. Condensation fogs the edges when you exhale too hard. You try to breathe evenly, controlled, the way they taught you, but your heart isn't listening. You attempt to eat a ration. The packaging tears awkwardly in your hands. Inside is a beige paste of protein and starch. You squeeze a bit into your mouth. It tastes like flour and rust. You chew anyway. You were told not to skip meals, even if you feel nauseated. You do feel nauseated, but you eat, slowly. You try to urinate into the waste system. It takes longer than expected. The suction is weak. The seal doesn't quite hold. You press your body against it more tightly, shifting your position with effort. Eventually it works. The delay is recorded. You don't know if anyone will read that part of the log. When you finish the cycle, you float back into your station and reach for the external system panel. This one monitors the solar arrays, the lifeline for the capsule's power. You toggle the external cameras. 2 of them respond. The third gives you static. You try again. Same result. You tap the screen gently. Static resolves, then flickers away again. You switch to the deployment readings. The left array is showing full extension, power nominal. The right, however, is only reading at 73% deployment. No power fluctuation, no error messages, just incomplete. You feel a drop of cold sweat travel down your spine. You swallow, then toggle the readout again. Still 73%. You try the camera again, and this time the image comes through. Brief, shaky, washed out, but enough. The panel isn't fully deployed. One corner appears slightly recessed, not flush with the rest of the arm. You tap the screen once more, hoping for better clarity. It doesn't help. The system doesn't consider this an emergency. The diagnostics say nothing is wrong, but it isn't right either. You check the manual override panel. There is an option for redeployment, but it's marked as restricted. A red tag sticker remains across the button, printed with instructions not to engage without direct clearance from ground command. You consider that for a moment. Then you reach for the radio. Your voice is calm as you describe the issue. You don't speculate. You report. The power draw is stable. No alarms. Just a 27% discrepancy in the extension of the right solar array. You release the transmitter button and wait. Seconds pass, then a full minute. No response, and you repeat the message. Your tone is still steady, still procedural. This is what you've trained for, not to fix, but to report. Still nothing. You leave the radio channel open and mark the discrepancy in the logbook. You note the time. You write down the voltage reading. You do not record the fact that you're beginning to feel very alone. You finish the checklist. You float in place. The earth passes beneath you again. You don't look at it this time. There is nothing it can offer you now. You re-attempt the solar panel deployment exactly 4 hours after first reporting the issue. The checklist allows for a second attempt, provided no mechanical strain is detected. You reason that strain is hard to detect when the sensors insist everything is normal. But the panel still isn't fully extended, and the image on the external camera, blurry though it is, hasn't changed. You key in the command, fingers heavy against the panel. You wait. There's a delay, longer than there should be. For a moment, the status light flickers yellow, then settles back into green. The screen says the panel is fully extended. The camera shows otherwise. No new power draw, no vibration, no movement. You stare at the display, watching it lie to you. You cycle through the onboard systems to confirm the voltage. It's still slightly lower than projected, not enough to trigger a fault, but enough that it sticks in your brain like a splinter. You switch back to the camera. The image jitters once, then returns to static. You don't try it again. You report it over comms, same as before. You speak slowly, clearly, using the proper call signs and the exact language you've been drilled with. You recite the anomaly, the time code, the system ID. You ask for instruction. You wait. 30 seconds pass, then 60. No acknowledgement. You send the message again, this time tagging it priority level 2. Still nothing. The air in the capsule is dry and slightly stale. You adjust the intake valve on your helmet and immediately regret it. The smell of your own sweat, trapped and recycled, hits you like a hand to the face. You close the valve halfway and return to the diagnostics panel. Another system light is blinking now. The environmental temperature regulator is showing a mild offset, less than 1 degree, but it's new. You flip to the manual. It says to monitor the fluctuation and report if the shift increases beyond tolerance. It doesn't say what to do if there's no one to report to. You open the channel a third time and ask for status confirmation. This time, you don't bother with the anomaly. You just want to know someone is still listening. Anyone. You count to 30, then 60, then 90, still silence, not even a carrier tone. You begin to suspect it's not just the panel. You open a secondary line, emergency protocol, a narrow band frequency that bypasses the main relay and connects directly to the fallback receiver. You've never used it before. You're not even sure it was ever tested during training. You speak into the silence anyway. Still nothing. You double-check the onboard transmitter. The diagnostics say it's operational. The signal strength indicator fluctuates slightly, then holds steady. You adjust the antenna orientation manually, which isn't recommended, but you do it anyway. Nothing changes. The screen says the capsule is transmitting. You believe it? You just don't believe anyone's receiving? You log the failures. That's what protocol says. 1 entry for the panel, 1 for the camera, 1 for the comms, 1 for the new temperature offset, which now shows an additional half-degree drift. Still not a fault, still not actionable, still not right. The manual says, trust the systems, but the systems don't seem to be trusting each other, and you're stuck somewhere between their disagreements. You run the diagnostics again. This time, a switch on the life support feedback module doesn't respond. It clicks, but no corresponding indicator lights. You try it again. Same result. You remove your glove to confirm tactile response. The switch moves, the panel does not react. You tap it, once, twice, nothing. You try to keep your breathing steady. You know how quickly panic can compound in a closed system. The CO2 filters are rated for stress spikes, but you'd rather not test them. You begin repeating the startup sequence on the transmitter, hoping to shake the signal back to life. The screen flickers once, then returns to static. You switch to telemetry burst mode and send out a single packet message confirming system errors and requesting emergency contact. You wait, nothing. You attempt the redundant beacon, you cycle power to the antenna array, you rotate the capsule 30 degrees off its orbital path to try and establish a new line of sight. The radio remains silent. You begin to entertain other explanations. Perhaps the ground station has shifted frequency and failed to relay the update. Perhaps the relay satellite is malfunctioning. Perhaps weather interference, although you know that's unlikely in orbit. Perhaps a solar flare, but the instruments haven't indicated one. You check the radiation sensor anyway. It's reading normal. You check your vitals, pulse elevated, oxygen levels stable, core temperature just slightly above optimal. You're sweating again, but not from the suit this time. The back of your neck is damp. You wipe it with your forearm, which smears the moisture into your collar. It doesn't matter. You try one last time, this time using every protocol flag available. Distress, systems anomaly, communication failure, solo capsule, request status, request confirmation, request instruction. You listen to your own voice echo back through the headset, distorted slightly by the interior mic. The delay is strange, enough to make you feel like someone else is speaking the words half a second behind you. When you finish, there is no reply. The delay stretches, then stretches further, until it's not a delay anymore. It's an absence. You realise the radio is dead. Or worse, it's alive, and no one's on the other end. You drift in the capsule, the checklist floating beside you. The Earth rolls past the porthole again, vast and unreachable. Cities blink like reflections in water. Somewhere down there, someone might be tracking your orbit. Someone might still be listening. Or maybe not. Maybe you're already forgotten. You close the channel and cycle it back open. You say nothing this time. You just breathe, waiting for something. Static, interference, a tone, anything. You get nothing. Complete radio silence. You initiate the backup life support checklist, not because anything has fully failed, but because failure now feels inevitable. It's not a reaction to an alarm. No alarm has sounded, but a response to that silent certainty creeping into your chest. The awareness that something in the system is leaning, shifting under its own weight. You don't know where the tipping point is, but you've seen it inching closer. The procedure begins with diagnostics, just like in training. You pull up the secondary life support monitor, flick the protective cover off the manual override switch, and begin the process of rerouting environmental control to backup circuits. Your gloves make everything harder. The switches are small, the toggles stiff. You move deliberately, muttering each step aloud to keep your hands from shaking. There's no one to hear you, but your voice feels like an anchor in the silence. You switch power routing to the auxiliary system, watching as each green light flickers into place, one by one. Filtration, temperature, humidity, CO2 scrubbing, all register within nominal range. For a moment you feel relief. The backups work, at least on paper. Then comes the atmospheric pressure regulator. You flip the toggle, it resists more than it should. You press again, harder. It clicks into position. The status light comes on, but with a faint yellow glow instead of the steady green you were expecting. You check the readout. Pressure is stable, but the flow rate has dropped slightly. Nothing critical, just enough to suggest strain. You note it in your log and move on. Next is oxygen conservation protocol. You adjust your breathing pattern as instructed, short inhales, longer exhales, to slow the rate of consumption. It doesn't feel natural. You have to think through each breath. The helmet fogs a little at the edges. Your lungs begin to feel heavy, even though the mixture is still within acceptable ratios. You blink away the dizziness. You reach for the water ration pack and set it to minimal dispensing. The intake nozzle is dry when you touch it to your lips. You squeeze and a measured trickle arrives. You let it settle on your tongue for a moment before swallowing. You consider taking more. You don't. Food remains untouched. Your appetite has left you. Or maybe it's still there, buried under the realization that you've become something closer to cargo than crew. You are here to last, not to live. Nutrition can wait. You check the capsule's orientation. The data suggests everything is as it should be, but your eyes tell a different story. The planet below no longer rotates with the same smooth rhythm. It seems to shift subtly, as if you're drifting ever so slightly off axis. Not tumbling, not spinning out, just leaning. A slow loss of alignment that's too subtle to trigger any of the automatic correction systems, but clear enough once you notice it. You try to correct it using the manual control. The thruster response is sluggish. There's a pause between input and output that wasn't there before. The capsule responds eventually, but not evenly. You adjust again. A small pulse, the movement steadies, but only for a moment. It drifts back. You know what this means. The stabilizers are weakening, or the power feed is inconsistent. Maybe both. The capsule isn't breaking down, not all at once, but it's unraveling in increments, system by system. The structure holds, the lights stay on, the air still circulates. But the rhythm is changing. The capsule is no longer flying, it's coasting, it's enduring, just like you. You open the maintenance access panel and recheck the fuses. No burnouts, no visible arcing. The power system isn't failing yet, but the draw is uneven. You redistribute the load manually, shifting more current to the core systems and locking non-essential modules into standby. You hesitate briefly before turning off the internal heater. The temperature drops almost immediately. You tell yourself it's manageable. You've been colder. You perform another status check on the comms panel. It's still dead. The light that usually blinks in rhythm with transmissions is dark. You speak into the headset again anyway, your voice softer now, almost apologetic, as if you might be disturbing someone. You offer a short systems update, more out of habit than hope. You receive no reply. You reorient your focus to the oxygen supply. The main tank is holding steady, but you know better than to trust it blindly. You begin the secondary validation. Pressure reading, flow rate, valve integrity. So far, everything checks out. Then you switch to the reserve regulator, the fail-safe, and it doesn't engage. You flip the toggle again. Nothing. The light stays dark. You feel the panel for heat, for vibration, for any sign of life. It's inert. The regulator isn't responding. No hiss of pressure equalizing, no indicator spike, no delay, just silence. You try the reset procedure. You cycle the switch off, wait 15 seconds, then flip it again. Still nothing. You check the line pressure. 0, not low, 0. The system isn't clogged. It's inactive, entirely. The reserve tank is full. The connection is good. But the regulator, the thing that delivers the oxygen into the system when the primary fails, isn't functioning. It's as if someone forgot to connect it, or connected it wrong, or never expected it to be needed in the first place. You stare at the reading for a long time. You feel your heart rate increasing, and immediately try to force it down again. Stress burns oxygen. Panic burns it faster. You start counting your breaths, keeping them steady. 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. Again, again, again. You check the manual. It offers 3 steps for regulator failure. All of them assume contact with mission control. All of them end with the same instruction. Await further direction. You look at the comms panel, still dead. You look at the porthole. The Earth is sliding past again. Familiar, indifferent, unreachable. You log the failure. You write down the time, the pressure, the sequence of steps you followed. You note the silence. You include it in the entry, like it's just another variable. The capsule isn't failing yet, but it's no longer maintaining itself either. And now, neither are you. You wake to a muscle spasm in your right leg. It hits without warning, a sudden sharp clench of the calf that sends your body jolting against the harness. The restraint straps catch your movement, digging into your shoulders and thighs as you flail for a moment in confusion. Your knee jerks involuntarily, twisting against the edge of the console. Pain shoots up your spine. You exhale hard and your breath fogs the inside of your visor. The cramp fades slowly, like a fist unclenching. You press your fingers into the muscle, trying to knead it flat, but the pressure doesn't help much. The pain lingers, dull and pulsing, as if your body is reminding you that you've pushed it past the line it was built to endure. You take several deep breaths to steady yourself. It doesn't work. Your heart is racing, and your fingers are trembling now. You try to stretch, but the capsule doesn't allow for stretching. It barely allows for motion. You unclip the harness and push gently away from the console, floating toward the center of the cabin. Your arms feel heavy, even without gravity. Your elbows ache, and there's a strange stiffness in your shoulders that reminds you of sleeping wrong on a cold cot. You grab the checklist from the wall and drift back to your seat, but the effort leaves your chest tight. It's harder to get your breath under control than it should be. The air feels thin even though the gauges say it's normal. You cycle through the environmental readouts again. Everything shows green. Everything lies. You know your body better than the instrument panel does. You weren't taught to trust pain, but you've learned. The human body is slower than a computer, but more honest. You record the muscle spasm in the log. You also note the tremor in your hands and the mild tightness in your chest. You phrase it clinically, the way they trained you to, as if language alone can sterilize symptoms. You close the logbook and rest your head against the bulkhead for a moment, letting your eyes close. There's no day or night here, just the cycle of lights and silence. You don't know how long you've been up. You don't know how long you're supposed to last. You attempt to eat something. The tube of protein paste resists your grip. When you finally squeeze it into your mouth, it tastes like powdered glue and salt. You gag, but manage to keep it down. For a few minutes, your stomach settles. Then it doesn't. The nausea arrives without grace. One moment you're drifting, trying to finish a diagnostic readout, and the next, your body convulses. You twist toward the waste bag, but the motion is too fast, too clumsy, and you don't make it in time. The vomit floats upward in a slow, sickening arc, yellow and sour, and flecked with something darker than you want to identify. It hangs in the air like a reminder that gravity is gone, and dignity doesn't exist up here. You grab a rag and try to catch the mess before it touches anything sensitive. It smears across the visor of your helmet. You peel it off, gagging again, and manage to clean most of it, though a faint smell lingers in the air, a metallic rot that no filter can quite erase. You breathe through your mouth and force yourself to finish wiping down the equipment. You record the incident. You label it as isolated. You know it isn't. Your skin has started to itch, first along your forearms, then the small of your back, a prickling irritation that spreads slowly, steadily, until you can't ignore it. You press your fingers into your suit, where the sensation is worst, and feel heat blooming under the fabric. You remove a glove and find red blotches across your wrist. Raised, irregular, like sunburn, but you haven't seen real sunlight in days. You note that too. You don't label it. You don't know what to call it yet. Your gums ache. When you press your tongue to the inside of your cheek, it tastes like copper. You probe the edge of a molar with your fingernail and flinch at the tenderness. You clench your jaw in frustration, and a sharp pain flashes through your mouth. When you spit into a cloth, it comes away pink. Just a trace, just enough to know something has shifted inside you. Something is breaking down. You float in place and close your eyes just for a moment. You imagine yourself from the outside, a man in a suit, drifting in a tin can above the earth, slowly unraveling while systems insist that everything is fine. You wonder if they accounted for this in the calculations. The human part, the part that degrades. You suspect they didn't. You remember a line from training: the body adapts, but you're not adapting, you're decaying. Quietly, efficiently, without fanfare. Your muscles are thinning, your skin is reacting to whatever filters miss. Your stomach rejects what it's supposed to absorb. You keep logging the data, you keep pretending it matters. You attempt a brief exercise routine, the one designed to minimize muscular atrophy. Resistance bands, isometric holds. You begin the first set, floating awkwardly against the restraints. Your legs don't cooperate. Your left knee clicks when you extend it. The bands slip. You try again, slower. Your arms shake by the second repetition. You pause and wipe your forehead. The sweat has begun to pool inside the suit. You feel it along your spine, a slick discomfort that makes every movement harder. The fans in the suit are running, but they're no longer keeping up. You hear their whine, just slightly more strained than before. You're not sure if the sound has changed or if your hearing has. You move on to system checks. The manual override for cabin pressure needs to be tested once every 12 hours. You reach for the switch, the same one you've toggled a dozen times now, and your vision swims. It's not dramatic, no sudden blackout, just a quiet drift to the side, a greying at the edges, a tilt that doesn't stop. You blink rapidly. Your fingers graze the panel, then miss. The checklist slips from your hand and floats past your field of vision. You reach for it, then feel your body sag. Not fall, there's nowhere to fall, just collapse inward, a silent folding of will. You lose control of your limbs for half a second, then a full second. You try to blink again, but the motion doesn't connect. Then nothing. When you wake, the cabin is unchanged. The lights still glow dim and colourless. The panel hums. The fan drones. The checklist has lodged itself against the far bulkhead. You're floating sideways, legs bent slightly, one arm curled under your torso like a question mark. You don't know how long you've been out. Minutes, hours. There's no clock that counts time when you're unconscious. You reach for the console. Your fingers are numb. You whisper your own name, just to make it feel like someone is still in here with you. It begins with static, just a flicker of sound, barely audible through the headset. A crackle, a pop, the faint hiss of white noise. It happens while you're drifting near the comms panel, one hand hovering near the transmitter toggle. You freeze every muscle tight, listening. For a moment, you're certain you hear a voice underneath the static. A clipped syllable, sharp and human. You strain toward it, breath held, heart suddenly awake. The sound fades before you can make sense of it. You check the diagnostics. Nothing has changed. The transmitter still shows inactive. The signal log is blank. The backup beacon is cold. You toggle the receiver manually, just to be sure. The screen flickers, then stabilizes into clean silence. You think, maybe, it was feedback. A phantom tone bouncing through circuits too old for confidence. But then it happens again the next day. Or maybe it's still the same day. Time isn't acting normally anymore. The second time, it's more distinct. Not words exactly, but the rhythm of speech, the cadence of a sentence just beyond comprehension. Like someone talking behind a closed door, the meaning lost but the presence undeniable. You respond without thinking, a quiet repeat over, half whispered through your helmet. The sound cuts off. The silence returns deeper than before. You stare at the panel as if it might blink back to life. It doesn't. You tell yourself it's stress, fatigue, a perfectly logical neurological response to confinement, isolation, and a failing oxygen supply. You've read the studies, you've recited the warnings in training. In prolonged silence, the brain may create stimuli to fill the gap. You repeat that line to yourself like it's a prayer, but it doesn't stop the sound from coming back. By the third time, it's a name. Not clearly spoken, not even fully formed, but shaped like your name. The first syllable slips through the static, like breath on glass. You sit up straight, eyes wide, and answer immediately. You ask who's transmitting. You give your name, your capsule designation, your current orbit path. You ask for confirmation. There is none. Just static again. Still, you find yourself smiling, absurdly grateful for something that even pretended to resemble contact. You replay the message using the onboard recorder. It's not there. The log file is empty. The memory buffer shows no recent input. You check 3 times before accepting that the sound wasn't real in any way that leaves a trace. You begin responding to the static more often. Not with protocol, but with conversation. You start small. Copy that, or say again, just to keep the air from feeling so thick. Then it turns into fragments of old scripts, lines from briefings you half remember. Eventually, you drift into memories. You start talking to people who aren't there, asking questions you know they never answered the first time. You find yourself rehearsing an old conversation with your mother. Not any specific one, more a composite, a softened collection of all the things she ever said to calm you when you were young. You speak her lines aloud, and then your replies you say, "Don't worry," and pretend you believe it. You imagine her voice saying, "It'll pass," even though you're not sure what it is anymore. You write her a letter, not with any intention of sending it, but to give your hands something to do. You fold a sheet of technical log paper in half and scrawl crooked lines with the capsule pen. You tell her you're doing fine, that you're strong, that she would be proud. Then you cross it out and start again. You tell her the truth, that your muscles are failing, that your teeth hurt, that you vomited and floated in it and couldn't quite clean it all, that the silence isn't empty anymore, it's crowded. You fold the letter and wedge it under the control panel beside the emergency fuse kit. You tell yourself someone will find it someday, even though you know no one's coming. Sleep doesn't happen the way it used to. You close your eyes and drift, but your brain doesn't power down. It just loops. Scenes from training. The officer with the clipboard. The man in the beige suit explaining atmospheric pressure tolerance. The general with the dead eyes. They visit you now, each of them saying nothing new. Just standing there, waiting. You open your eyes and they're gone. You close them again and they come back. You try to measure time by the planet's rotation. You count the passes, the daylit sweep over continents, the night drift above cities like spilled starlight. But it all blends. The rhythm doesn't anchor you. It taunts you. The earth keeps turning. You do not. You start hearing voices more often. Not just one now, sometimes 2, sometimes more. At first they seem external. Someone muttering behind a bulkhead. Someone breathing on the other end of a dead channel. Then they move inside. You hear them in the back of your skull, soft and patient. They don't frighten you, not really. They're company. They keep you from screaming. You ask one of them their name. It doesn't answer. You ask again, and then laugh. You float in place for what feels like an hour, just laughing quietly. The sound pressed into your helmet, like breath on glass. Your throat is dry afterward. Your ribs ache from the effort. You find yourself narrating tasks out loud. Not just reading the checklist, but explaining it. Now we check the filter. The filter's fine. Of course it is. It's always fine. Until it isn't. You pause after each sentence as if someone else might reply. Sometimes you even imagine their voice. Sometimes you think you hear it. "Good work," it says. "Keep going." You nod. You smile. You move to the next task. You begin to hum. A low melody, tuneless and slow. You can't remember where you learned it. It might be from a film, or a lullaby, or a fragment of a national anthem. You hum it while rerouting a power line. You hum it while strapping down a loose component. You hum it while brushing a rash on your leg that has begun to blister. One morning, though you don't know if it's actually morning, you start talking about your childhood aloud. You tell the empty cabin about your brother, about the first time you saw snow, about how the river behind your house used to freeze in thick plates that cracked like gunfire when you stepped on them. You pause often, letting the stories drift, as if someone else is there to fill in the details. You mention your mother again, then your father, then someone you think you knew in school. You wonder aloud whether they've seen your picture in the paper, whether they've been told you're still up here doing important things. You don't realise you're crying until your visor fogs, in a way that doesn't match your breathing. The tears don't fall, they just collect, hover, blur your vision. You wipe them away and don't mention it again. You hear another voice. This one sounds like your own. It repeats the checklist in a slow, flat tone, half a second behind your real voice. You turn your head, expecting to find someone beside you. There's no one there. Later, while performing a diagnostic, you speak a full sentence aloud and wait for the reply. It doesn't come. You nod anyway, as if it has. You keep speaking, small things, jokes, observations, instructions. You don't know when you started doing it without thinking. You speak to no one and forget, briefly then completely, that no one is listening. Back on Earth, there's a meeting. It takes place in a windowless room, deep inside a government facility that doesn't officially exist. The walls are lined with green metal filing cabinets and peeling acoustic tile. A fan turns slowly overhead, not enough to cool the room, just enough to circulate the warm dust and tension. There are 7 men present. None of them wear name tags. Most of them wear medals. Their expressions are unreadable, practiced to the point of weaponization. At the centre of the table is a single folder, thin, unassuming, labelled in block Cyrillic with your name and your capsule designation. There is a paperclip holding the final transmission log. There are no photographs, no health reports, no confirmation, just a stack of incomplete telemetry, a summary of communication failures, and a stamped copy of your last known checklist. The man at the head of the table reads the report aloud. His tone is flat. There is no speculation in his voice, only a list of times and errors, each recited like they're being crossed off as he speaks. You are referred to as the pilot, not by name. When he finishes, there is a moment of silence, but not the kind that suggests mourning. It's more like a brief pause in administrative rhythm. Someone asks if recovery is possible. A lower-ranking officer replies with a number. The percentage is small, too small to justify resources. A man in a blue uniform nods once and says, "Inconclusive." Another nods in agreement. That word, more than any other, seals your fate. There is no vote, no dissent, only the sound of a stamp pressed into paper. The meeting ends within 17 minutes. The file is not destroyed, not immediately. It is moved out of the active program folder, out of the current mission archive, into a drawer marked with a 4-digit code and the word archived. The drawer is locked. The key is returned to a secretary who will never ask what it opens. Your name is not mentioned again that day. At the launch facility, a technician is told to deactivate your telemetry relay and reassign the frequency. Another removes your photo from the training wall. A third is instructed to recover your belongings from the barracks. There aren't many. A uniform, a toothbrush, a ration card, a small notebook with a few pages torn out. These are placed in a sealed envelope, marked personnel effects, and forwarded to a storage facility in an unnamed district. The envelope will never be claimed. Your bunk is reassigned before sunset. The new occupant is younger. He asks no questions. In the public records, the mission is delayed. Not cancelled, just delayed. A brief announcement mentions routine maintenance. No launch occurred, no failure occurred. Nothing occurred. The news moves on to brighter subjects. A new medal awarded, a commemorative parade, the unveiling of a statue that bears no resemblance to you. Back in Moscow, a man in a wool coat writes a memo stating that the cosmonaut in question is presumed neutralized, and that further updates will be classified for internal review. The document is stamped 3 times and placed in a drawer beside others like it, some thicker, some even thinner. A system designed not to remember, but to manage forgetting. At your mother's address, a man in uniform visits 2 days later. He brings no flowers, no certificate, no official condolence. He does not say that you died. He says that your training has been suspended, that you're no longer active in the program, that you're not expected to return. He offers no reason. When she asks if her son is alive, he says he is not authorized to comment. She closes the door before he finishes his sentence. Later, she sits at the kitchen table and folds your last letter in half. It doesn't say much, just a few lines. Doing well, proud to serve, will write again when I can. She reads it over and over until the words stop meaning anything. She doesn't show it to anyone. Your training records are redacted. Your flight designation is reassigned. Your capsule's blueprints are modified to remove references to the error that stranded you. The communications failure is labelled as a temporary anomaly. The oxygen regulator defect is categorised as theoretical. The malfunctioning panel is marked as operator error. Your face is not erased, but it is never shown again. When someone asks about your image in an old photo, the caption says test subject. When your name appears in early flight rosters, it is misspelled or truncated. The index file points to a page that no longer exists. At some point in the future, the archived folder will be reviewed during a quarterly audit. A man will read your name, flip through the documents, find nothing actionable, and write a note in the margin. Recommend final deletion. The folder will be boxed, stored for a week, then shredded. The machine doesn't remember you. The machine remembers nothing that fails to serve its image. Back in orbit, your capsule still turns, slowly, quietly. No beacon, no call sign, no telemetry. You are listed in no flight path. You are tracked by no satellite. You are alone, still drifting above a world that has written you out. You are not gone, not yet, but you are no longer real. Your final log entry is brief. It's dated, but even that feels meaningless now. You note oxygen pressure. You list the battery level. You attempt a final system status report, though most of the dials no longer respond. Your handwriting is cramped and slightly shaky. Not from fear, not anymore, but from the quiet tremor in your right hand that hasn't stopped in 2 days. You sign it with your last name only, out of habit, or perhaps because the rest of your name no longer seems necessary. You cap the pen and place it into the same crevice behind the control panel where you wedged the letter to your mother. You don't look at either of them again. They aren't for you. Nothing in here is, not really. The capsule was never built to protect you, only to contain you, for as long as necessary. That time has passed. There are still procedures taped to the interior bulkhead, yellowed pages with typewritten instructions. How to troubleshoot comms, how to bypass the life support interface, how to reroute auxiliary power. You've stopped referencing them. They no longer apply to your reality. The systems they describe have already failed or become irrelevant. The capsule no longer asks anything of you, and so you have stopped pretending to respond. The logbook sits idle. The sensors are mostly dead. The cabin temperature fluctuates with each orbit, swinging between too cold and too warm in erratic waves. The condensation on the walls has dried into a thin crust. The air smells like copper and ammonia, a mixture of human sweat, dying electrics, and recycled failure. You taste it when you breathe. You no longer check the earth as you pass overhead. The first few days, you try to spot landmarks, cities, rivers, the edge of the continent, but eventually, it all blended into a blur of clouds and geometry. Beautiful, yes, but too far to mean anything. Now, when you do glance through the small window, it's mostly habit, a flick of the eyes, a kind of muscle memory. The view no longer comforts, it just confirms your distance. The food packets are still strapped down, unopened. You stopped eating 3 cycles ago. Maybe 4. It's hard to tell. Hunger went from distraction to nausea, and then to something more abstract, a buzzing in the back of your thoughts that you no longer interpret as need. The water ration is nearly gone, but it doesn't matter. You sip when your lips crack too deeply. That's all. You've stopped wearing the restraints during rest periods. At first, you followed protocol, anchoring yourself to the panel, limbs folded neatly, arms bound to keep from drifting. Now you let your body float. It bumps gently against the walls sometimes, or rotates slowly, like a forgotten tool. You no longer correct its movements. You're not afraid of drifting. Your suit remains stowed, folded and latched, exactly where you placed it after the last systems check. You haven't worn it since the day you realised no one would be responding. The air is still breathable, though thinner now. You've stopped measuring it. You already know the outcome. The pressure changes are subtle but cumulative. You can feel them in your joints. Your skin has begun to itch in places, flake in others. Your muscles feel foreign. Not painful exactly, just wrong. Soft where they shouldn't be. You haven't tried to stretch in a while. There's no point. You haven't spoken aloud in at least a day, possibly more. The voices, real or imagined, have faded into silence again. You don't miss them. You'd grown tired of arguing with echoes. The cabin hum has diminished. The systems that remain operational are barely audible now, running at half capacity or simply pretending to. The electric buzz of function has become the slow exhale of inertia. Every hour that passes, the capsule drifts fractionally lower. You've noticed it. You've felt it. There's a difference in the trajectory, subtle but steady. The stars shift. The math becomes heavier. You no longer wonder what will happen. You've stopped rehearsing scenarios, re-entry, rupture, decay. The possibilities narrowed as the systems failed, until only one remained. It's not a dramatic end. It's a tapering, a slow unravelling of orbit, an eventual encounter with gravity that no one will see. The guidance system has gone dark. The stabilizers flutter occasionally, then freeze. The control panel flickers, but you don't reach for it. It's not your job anymore. Perhaps it never was. You were trained to simulate control, not to survive, not to return. Your body floats near the window now. You've angled yourself to face outward. Though your eyes are rarely open, when they are, they settle on the same horizon. The curve of Earth, lit by the sun's edge, breaking day across places you'll never walk again. There's no longing, just acknowledgement. You were once from there. Now you're not from anywhere. You think about your bunkmate, the one who disappeared from the barracks without a sound. You think about the officer who shook your hand during your first mask fitting and never spoke to you again. You think about the file, the one that selected you before you knew you were being considered. You try to imagine who read it last, who decided you were useful, who decided you were done. No one's coming. That's been clear for a long time, but it no longer feels like a punishment, just a condition. Like cold, like silence, the orbit dips again. You feel it before the instruments confirm it, a slight increase in weight against your chest, a shift in the capsule's angle. You brace yourself against the wall, not out of panic, just reflex. The motion levels, then continues, lower. No alarm sound, no emergency procedures activate. The capsule makes no protest. It wasn't designed to. Far below, your signal isn't being tracked. Your name doesn't appear on any flight manifest. Your capsule is no longer listed on internal records. The hardware ID has been decommissioned. Even if someone happened to catch your trajectory on a foreign telescope, it would mean nothing. Just more debris. You are not listed as deceased. You are not listed as anything. You try to count the orbits. You lose track by the second one. There is no pain, not yet. Just stillness. Just the faint burn behind your eyes from the dry air, and the thudding rhythm of your heart. Slower now, but persistent. It's a rhythm no one else hears. You close your eyes not to sleep but to wait. And while you float there, somewhere between shadow and sun, your capsule dips a little farther into the Earth's invisible pull, slow, steady, unnoticed. One more object among thousands, spiraling down through a sky that no longer remembers you were ever launched. The sensors stutter first, a flicker, a half-measured spark, a pressure blip that doesn't resolve into data. The systems don't warn you. They can't. Most of them have failed, and the few that haven't are confused by the numbers they're receiving. Atmospheric friction begins as a whisper, a heat differential against the capsule's shell, too soft to trigger alarms, too scattered to register on what's left of your dashboard. But outside, around the battered metal curve of the hull, the burn has already started. You don't respond, you don't move, you're not in your harness, you haven't been for some time. You're not logging, not speaking, not listening. Whether your body's alive or not is now a question of semantics. Functionally, you've already left. Your heartbeat may still echo softly in the vacuum of your chest, but your mind stopped tracking cycles several orbits ago. The distinction between sleep and unconsciousness no longer applies. The capsule, unlike you, follows its final orders. Gravity, ever patient, tugs at the orbit it once permitted. A millimetre lower with each revolution, until the line breaks and drag takes hold. The heat builds gradually, then exponentially. The air grows thick around the capsule's nose. Particles brush and hiss and then collide in earnest. The shell heats unevenly. Ablative panels blacken, then peel, then vanish in bursts of plasma. Still, there is no telemetry, no beacon call, no human eyes observing. If anyone were watching, they might see a flicker on a low-altitude trajectory map, a shape without a name, no call sign, no flag, just another object returning to Earth in pieces. But no one is watching, no one is looking for you. The program has moved on. The antennas that once tracked your progress have been retuned. The file that bore your name has been mulched. The sky's full of more interesting projects now. Safer launches, better outcomes, survivors with medals. Inside the capsule, heat seeps slowly at first, then punches through. The internal cabin pressure rises. The wires nearest the shell begin to melt in slow arcs, their insulation bubbling like blistered skin. Metal distorts, bolts shear. The temperature is no longer survivable, but there is no one left to survive it. If your body is still inside, it's no longer resisting. Muscles slack, eyes shut or burned. Breathing, if it happens at all, is no longer rhythmic. Nothing you are now can be hurt. The descent steepens. Gravity stops pulling and starts punishing. Somewhere over the Indian Ocean, the capsule ruptures. Not all at once, not in some great cinematic burst, but in increments, layers splitting from stress and temperature. A joint fails, then a panel, then a seam. The interior floods with carbonized smoke. The wiring folds in on itself. The remaining systems blink once and go black for good. There is no broadcast, no black box, no recovery beacon. Just heat and speed and fire, peeling your last known location into ash. Below, the ocean remains indifferent. A ribbon of grey-blue, unmoved by the sky's exhalation. The waves lap steadily beneath cloud cover that softens the descent into visual silence. You do not come down in view of ships. You do not come down in sight of land. There is no radar ping, no splash detected. The capsule hits the water at terminal velocity, or what's left of it does, and sinks before the waves have even finished breaking. There is no buoy, no flare, no oil slick. The sea takes what the sky could not hold, and it takes it without comment. If anything remains intact, it will rust in darkness. There will be no salvage mission, no retrospective report. The failure, such as it was, will remain unspoken. That was always the plan. Success is for parades. Failure is for forgetting. At a weather station half a world away, a technician logs a spike in upper atmosphere ionization. He attributes it to solar activity, another anomaly, filed and time-stamped. No one connects it to you. They can't. You are no longer associated with anything. You are not missing. You are not deceased. You are not. On a coastal shore, a piece of scorched metal may someday wash up. A panel warped beyond recognition. A rivet sealed in blackened foam. A scientist might pocket it out of curiosity, log it as space debris. A child might skip it into the tide. Either way, it will not be recognised for what it was. You will not be recognised for what you were. In the program's sealed archives, a project number quietly expires. The slot is reassigned, the code reused. The mission that carried you, the vessel that killed you, becomes a data point with no source. The designation becomes free for new use. A blank form is printed, a fresh line is drawn. Another cosmonaut is selected. They are told nothing. The capsule never had a name, only a number. Now even that has burned away. And so you vanish, not violently, not heroically, but completely. No remains, no record, no reason, not even a cautionary tale, just vapour, smoke, and a splash somewhere no one thought to look. Not because you weren't important, but because you were never meant to be noticed. Only launched, only lost. The ocean swallows your final moment. The sky does not remember your name. That brings us to the end of tonight's story. Silent, scorched, and quietly sinking beneath unmarked waves. If you're still listening, thank you for drifting through the cold and the static with me, for bearing witness to a life that wasn't ended so much as erased. The Soviet space program didn't mourn its failures. It buried them in sealed files and distant oceans, too secret to grieve. But for a moment, you've remembered one of them. If you'd like early access to more of these quiet tragedies, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, you'll find a link to the Patreon in the description. Feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with other forgotten corners of history you'd like to see covered.